Stellaris is 8 years old, and the developers are celebrating this with a season pass for some reason, which in my opinion is a pretty weird thing to do. But you do you, dev team. The custodians were also weird at first, but turned out to be awesome. Anyway, 8 years is a long time. Long enough for weird controversy. Let's talk about some of these weird or controversial things that have happened over the lifetime of the game. Stellaris has a mobile game. I'll let that sink in for a moment. It is a standard timer economy title where you click buttons, wait for an undetermined amount of time, do some side stuff, then upgrade to the next thing. There is a ton of these on the Play Store. Announced back in October of 2019, people flocked to see what this was all about until it was suddenly pulled. Why? Well, let's take a closer look at this picture from the game's tutorial. Yes, those are Scorpion tanks from Halo. This image was apparently directly pulled from Halo concept art over what I would assume to be ArtStation and repurposed as filler in the background of Galaxy Command. Why? I have no idea. Maybe the team forgot to replace some placeholder art, as this was the pre-AI era where you had to find placeholder art from other places. I seriously doubt they went out of their way to take this particular piece of art from an incredibly recognizable sci-fi IP and think by themselves, gee, no one would ever recognize these iconic tanks from one of the best-selling Xbox games. Also, there's USNC written on the side of them. Anyway, this was made aware to the CEO of Paradox Interactive, then verified within the hour, and the game was taken down. After what was described as a content sweep, the game was then relaunched a few months later, but of course all the momentum was killed off due to the initial controversy. Galaxy Command is still available today and apparently has had over 500,000 downloads on Google Play with an average rating of 4.2 out of 5, which is a lot better than the average shovelware that you'd find on that particular platform. I've played some of it, and it's a fascinating little pseudo-Stellaris joyride. Back in March of 2021, we celebrated the announcement of the very first Stellaris board game spin-off called Infinite Legacy, a board game that promised to distill the Stellaris experience and bring it to the tabletop. The idea was apparently so powerful that it blew past its $50,000 goal within 15 minutes and had 1 million pledged within 24 hours. 3 years later, several slipped release dates and a pledge count of 2.5 million bucks. We still haven't seen this game appear. Supposedly, it's in production with a release later this year. However, the last time I heard anything about delivery, it was supposed to be sometime in either July or August of this year. So, hey, maybe it'll come this year. It was just, delayed by a couple of years. This hasn't stopped a massive amount of discord every single time there's an update on Kickstarter, with people being increasingly frustrated about the lack of visibility on what's going on with the game, any releases of a rulebook, or a variety of other perceived issues. Several creators like myself, Temple Institute, and even Stefan, if you're out there, I miss you, joined forces to back this project and be featured within the game. And to a certain degree, I wish I never had. I have no idea what's going on with this. I've seen it at PDXCon and it seemed to be pretty mature. However, this was over 2 years ago and still nothing has really been put in front of backers aside from a backer kit. With $2.5 million and 13,000 backers, each putting in an average of about $190 a person, I would hope that people will get their hands on this within the foreseeable future. In the meantime, though, it will probably continue being rather controversial. Speaking of board games, do you like Twilight Imperium? Did you know that there is a Stellaris-esque version of it? No? Introducing Stellaris Nexus, or as it's now known, Nexus 5X. First announced in 2023, it went through an early access period and then hit its 1.0 update sometime in 2024. It was touted as a multiplayer Stellaris-themed experience that can be finished within an hour. And I played a decent amount of this. It was actually quite fun to spend some time with people in Discord talking shit to each other and discussing our political moves like we were playing at a table. It sadly was rebranded and can no longer be found on Steam if you look for it under the Stellaris keyword. A multiplayer game has to have a decent population in order to work, and a 24-hour player peak of around 40 to 50 people is obviously not the healthiest, and that in combination with renaming the game, a lack of searchability, and no updates since April well, it's looking pretty dire for this one. It's a real shame because I had a lot of fun with it, and yeah, you can do a fairly quick match in about an hour. Go check it out. I'll just leave a link down in the description to the Steam page, because this one does deserve a lot more love, because I had so much fun with it, and I really wish it did a lot better than it ended up doing. Back when Stellaris was first launched, there was a special event in the game where you could encounter a nomadic empire that would travel from one side to the galaxy to the other. It would enter the galaxy from the void and only to exit on the other side of the void. And you may be wondering, ASpec, what are you talking about? I've never seen one of these. Well, then you probably have been playing with the Megacorp DLC active for most of your playing experience, because that expansion removes the nomads and replaces them with trade fleets. Yes, there is a DLC that removes content from the base game. Why? I have no idea. Maybe it causes issues with pathing, who knows? All I know is that they have a similar function. You know, they sell fleets, they can populate your worlds, and that's about it. If you want to experience them, all you gotta do is play the game without Megacorp. And get lucky. Speaking of Megacorp, however, of all the updates that Stellaris has ever received, 2.2 LeGuin is likely the most controversial. To this day, I still get people in my comments about this specific update, which came out 2 whole years after the release of the game and arguably took it out of its pseudo-early access state it launched into and gave us the Stellaris that we have today. Allow me to list some of the things that were changed or added in this particular update. It added pop classes, unemployment, housing, crime, alloys and consumer goods, internal and galactic markets, trade routing, admin cap, planetary devastation, but most controversially, the removal of the tile system and replacing it with districts and jobs. For those of you who are new around these parts, in the first 2 years of its life, Stellaris had a classic tile system on planets where buildings would have to be placed on a limited set of squares and pops would grow to fill them. The game director at the time looked at this, decided to rip it out, and essentially created what we would consider modern Stellaris. This created all sorts of problems, as it created a whole bunch of performance issues that took years to iron out. It took a long time, and I'm pretty sure there are some problems there still. It generated enough controversy that even now, 6 years later, there are still people who rant and rave about the removal of the tile system and its exclusion being one of the worst things since diced toast. The current system has existed 3 times longer than the tiles did, but apparently it still makes people upset. Stellaris spin-offs really do have a really bad time. Aside from Ghost Signal, I think none of them has really done all that well, which is such a shame. Stellaris as a concept and a franchise is so rich that making a spin-off game should be relatively easy. Sadly, this is apparently not the case, because there's Star Trek Infinite, a game that was essentially built on top of the existing version of Stellaris, launched and then was subsequently discontinued 6 months after release. Why? Declining numbers? Lack of interests? Who knows? All we know is that the game was abandoned 6 months after release, and that was it. It's a real shame because I personally enjoyed it quite a lot. There are some great ideas using features from other Paradox games for making interesting scenarios and outcomes. It was a little bit more railroady than Stellaris was, a little bit less freeform, if that makes any sense. And that was fine by me. Essentially, you could pick from 4 factions, the Federation, the Romulans, Klingons, and Cardassia, and take the galaxy in some really weird non-canon directions. You could save Romulus, have the Blorg invade, give Bajor back to Cardassia, much more. And with a setting like Star Trek, adding post-release content in the form of events and updates, it shouldn't be too much of a hassle, and let's be quite honest, the galaxy was shaped in such a way that it was pretty clear that they were going to add more things, probably adding in the Ferengi at some point. But that will never happen. It is dead. It currently sits with mixed reviews on Steam, which is terrible for a game. The game could do with a little bit more love, but it's unlikely to ever happen. Maybe we could do something like pull an Imperator, where the game suddenly gets a boost in traction and love from creators and the community in general, and then they can get a patch a few years after it was abandoned, but I really doubt it's going to happen. Blorg body pillows. Yes, they're real. They made 50 of them. I have one somewhere. I'm in the middle of renovating. It's probably in a box somewhere. And there you have it, 7 different things that happened over the last few years that were just weird or controversial. Is there anything on this list that still makes you think, man, that is super annoying and I really wish it didn't happen? Or, ASpec, you missed something super obvious and how could you not add it to this particular list? Let me know down in the comments below and see what the discourse is all about. I want to thank my patrons for making these videos possible. If you want to go hang out over there, the videos come out a day earlier than the ones on YouTube. You can go and enjoy it there. It costs like $1 a month or something along those lines, and you'll have no ads, so there's that. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves, and as always, each other.